I thought I was living in a fairy tale when my parents surprised me with the keys to a beautiful three-bedroom house on Maple Street. I was 30 years old, finally ready to settle down with my fiancé Marcus, and there they were, Mom and Dad, standing on my apartment doorstep with this huge grin and a set of silver keys. "Congratulations, sweetheart," Dad said, pulling me into one of his bear hugs. "We wanted to give you and Marcus the perfect start to your new life together." I remember crying, actually sobbing right there in the hallway while my neighbor Mrs. Davis peeked out her door to see what the commotion was about. The house was gorgeous. White picket fence, rose bushes in the front yard, hardwood floors that gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. It felt like everything I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl playing house in our backyard. "Are you serious?" I kept asking them. "This is really ours?" Mom nodded, tears in her eyes too. "We've been saving for years, honey. We wanted to do something special for our only daughter." Marcus was over the moon. He immediately started talking about which room would be his office, where we'd put the Christmas tree, how we'd host Thanksgiving dinner for the whole family. We moved in 2 weeks later, and for 6 months it was perfect. We painted the kitchen yellow, planted tomatoes in the backyard, and I finally felt like a real adult with a real life. But there were things I should have noticed. Little comments from my parents that didn't quite sit right. "Make sure you keep the house clean, Danielle," Mom would say during her weekly visits. We wanted to maintain its value. Or Dad mentioning how they'd invested so much in our future and how they hoped we'd make good choices. I brushed it off. They were just being protective parents, right? They'd spent their savings on this house for us. Of course they cared about how we treated it. The first rail crack appeared when Marcus and I got into a fight about money. Nothing major. He'd bought an expensive gaming console without discussing it with me first, and I was frustrated because we were trying to save for our wedding. It was the kind of argument every couple has, the kind you forget about in a week. Except my parents didn't forget about it. Mom called me the next morning. "Danielle, your father and I are concerned about Marcus's spending habits." "Mom, it's fine. We worked it out." "Honey, we need to talk. Can you come over for dinner tonight?" Without Marcus. I should have said no. I should have told her that my relationship was none of her business. But I was raised to be a good daughter, to respect my parents, to never cause waves. So I went. That dinner changed everything. "Danielle," Dad said, setting down his fork and looking at me with that serious expression he used when I was in trouble as a kid. "Your mother and I have been talking, and we're worried about your future with Marcus." "What do you mean?" "He's irresponsible with money," Mom chimed in. "And frankly, we're not sure he's the right man for you." I felt my stomach drop. "You barely know him." "We know enough," Dad said. "And we need to protect our investment." That word, investment, it hit me like a slap. "What are you talking about?" Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Sweetheart, we love you. But we can't let you throw your life away on someone who's going to drag you down financially. Marcus has a good job. He's a software engineer who spends money on video games instead of saving for your future," Dad interrupted. "Danielle, we didn't give you that house so you could play house with some boy who doesn't understand responsibility." I pulled my hand away from Mom's grip. "You gave us the house. It's ours." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom and Dad exchanged a look that made my blood run cold. "Actually, honey," Mom said slowly, "the house is still in our name." The room started spinning. "What?" "We thought it would be easier for taxes and insurance purposes," Dad explained, but his voice sounded far away. "We were planning to transfer it to you after the wedding, but given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" My voice came out as a whisper. "We think you should break up with Marcus," Mom said. "Find someone more suitable. Someone who shares our values." I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. "You're blackmailing me." "We're protecting you," Dad said firmly. "And protecting our investment. If you can't see that Marcus is wrong for you, then maybe you're not ready for the responsibility of homeownership." I drove home in a daze. Marcus was in the kitchen making dinner, humming some song under his breath, completely oblivious to the fact that our entire life had just been pulled out from under us. "How was dinner with your parents?" he asked, kissing my cheek. I couldn't tell him. Not yet. I needed time to think, to figure out what to do. So, I lied.
Fine.
Just the usual family stuff. But over the next few weeks, the pressure intensified. Mom would call every day with some new criticism of Marcus. Dad would stop by unannounced to check on the house and make pointed comments about Marcus's car in the driveway, or the dishes in the sink, or the way Marcus had arranged the furniture. "This isn't how we envisioned you living," he said one afternoon, running his finger along the coffee table and frowning at a water ring. We expected more maturity. Marcus started noticing the tension. "Your parents have been weird lately," he said one night as we were getting ready for bed. Did I do something wrong? I wanted to tell him everything, but I was terrified. If I told him the truth, that my parents were trying to control our relationship by holding the house over our heads, what would he think of me? What would he think of my family? And honestly, a small part of me wondered if they were right. Maybe Marcus was irresponsible. Maybe I was making a mistake. Maybe I didn't deserve the house if I couldn't make the right choices. The breaking point came 3 months later. Marcus and I had another fight, this time about his mother, who'd made some passive-aggressive comment about our wedding plans. It was stupid and petty, and we both said things we didn't mean. But it was loud, and the neighbors probably heard us yelling. The next morning, there was a knock on our door. It was Dad, and he wasn't alone. He had a man in a suit with him, a lawyer, it turned out. "Danielle, we need to talk," Dad said, pushing past me into the living room where Marcus was drinking coffee and reading the news on his laptop. "Mr. Thompson," the lawyer said to Marcus, "I'm going to need you to leave the premises." Marcus looked up confused. "I'm sorry, what?" "The homeowners have decided to reclaim their property," the lawyer continued. "You have 24 hours to remove your belongings." I felt like I was watching this happen to someone else. "Dad, what are you doing?" "What we should have done months ago," he said. "Danielle, you can stay, but Marcus needs to go." "You can't do this," Marcus said, standing up. "We live here. This is our home." "Actually," the lawyer said, pulling out a folder of papers, "the property belongs to Robert and Linda Chin. They have every right to determine who lives here."
Wait.
"Chin? Dad, your last name is Morrison. We bought the house through your mother's maiden name for tax purposes," Dad explained. "The point is, it's ours, and we're taking it back." Marcus looked at me, and I saw the exact moment he realized I'd known this was possible. The exact moment he understood that I'd been lying to him for months. "You knew," he said quietly. "You knew they could do this." I opened my mouth to explain, but no words came out. "Danielle," Dad said, "you have a choice to make. You can stay in the house and end this relationship, or you can leave with him and figure out your own housing situation." "Don't do this," I whispered. "Please." "We're doing this because we love you," Mom said, appearing in the doorway. "Someday you'll understand." Marcus was already moving toward the stairs. "I'll pack my stuff." "Marcus, wait."
No, Daniele.
He turned around, and his eyes were cold. "You let them do this. You knew they could take the house away, and you didn't tell me. You let me think we were building a life together, when really, we were just playing house until your parents decided they didn't like me anymore." He was right. I had let them do this. I'd been so desperate to keep the house, so afraid of disappointing my parents, that I'd betrayed the person I claimed to love. Marcus packed his things in silence while the lawyer stood in our living room, my living room, checking his watch. My parents sat on the couch like they were visiting someone else's house, making small talk about the weather. "This is for the best, honey," Mom said as Marcus carried his last box to his car. "You'll see."
But I didn't see.
I saw the man I loved driving away from the house we'd shared, the house where we'd planned to get married and have children and grow old together. I saw my parents smiling like they'd just solved a problem instead of destroying my life. That night, I sat alone in the house that no longer felt like home. Every room reminded me of Marcus. The kitchen where he'd made me breakfast every Sunday, the living room where we'd watched movies and argued about what to order for dinner, the bedroom where we'd talked about our future until we fell asleep. I called him 17 times. He didn't answer. For 2 weeks, I lived in that house like a ghost. My parents would visit daily, bringing groceries and acting like everything was normal. They'd talk about how much better I looked, how much more relaxed I seemed, how this was obviously the right decision. But I wasn't relaxed. I was dying inside. "We've been thinking," Dad said one afternoon. "Maybe you should start dating again. There's a nice young man at our church." Stop. The word came out louder than I intended. Just stop. "Danielle, we're only trying to help." Help. I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to me. "You destroyed my relationship. You manipulated me into choosing between the man I love and a house. How is that helping?" "Marcus wasn't right for you," Mom said firmly. "We could see that even if you couldn't. That wasn't your decision to make. It was our house," Dad said. "Our money, our choice." And that's when it hit me. This was never about Marcus being irresponsible or wrong for me. This was about control. My parents had given me the house not as a gift, but as a leash. They wanted to control who I dated, who I married, how I lived my life. And they'd used my own dreams against me to do it. "I want you to leave," I said quietly. "Honey, I want you to leave, and I want you to put this house on the market." Dad frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I don't want your house anymore. I don't want your money or your control or your manipulation. Sell it." "Danielle, you're being dramatic." "Sell it, or I'll move out and you can deal with an empty house that you're paying taxes and insurance on for no reason." They tried to argue with me, tried to convince me I was making a mistake, tried to guilt me into staying. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't listening to them. I was listening to myself. I moved out 3 days later. Found a tiny studio apartment across town that I could afford on my own salary. It had thin walls and a leaky faucet and a view of the parking lot, but it was mine. Really mine. Marcus never called me back. I found out through mutual friends that he'd moved to Seattle for a new job. I wrote him a letter apologizing for everything, explaining what had happened, telling him I understood why he couldn't forgive me. I never sent it. My parents sold the house within a month. They tried to give me half the proceeds, but I refused to take it. "Keep your money," I told them. "I don't want anything that comes with strings attached." It's been 2 years now. I still live in that studio apartment. I still miss Marcus every day. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to tell him the truth from the beginning, if I'd chosen love over security, if I'd stood up to my parents before it was too late. But I learned something important in that house on Maple Street. I learned that some gifts aren't gifts at all, they're traps. I learned that people who really love you don't use your dreams to control you. And I learned that sometimes the most expensive thing you can accept is something that's supposedly free. My parents still call occasionally, still act like they don't understand why I'm angry with them. "We were just trying to protect you," Mom said the last time we spoke. "We wanted what was best for you." But here's what I wish I could tell that 30-year-old girl who is so excited about those silver keys. The best thing for you is never something that requires you to betray yourself or the people you love. The best thing for you is never something that comes with invisible conditions and unspoken expectations. The best thing for you is the thing you choose for yourself, even if it's smaller, even if it's harder, even if it doesn't look like what everyone else thinks your life should be. I may have lost the house and the man I loved, but I found something more valuable. I found my own voice. And nobody, not even the people who raised me, can take that away.